Okay, we're going to look at recessive disorders. So we're going to go through some of the commonly known recessive disorders and give you a little bit of background on them. But what we're most interested in this is the genetics, the mode of transmission from parent to offspring. So, what is a recessive disorder? I'll just move my face up here. Okay, so in order to have a recessive disorder, you would have to get one copy of a mutated gene from each parent. So generally, you would get it from two parents who each carry a single copy of the gene, but don't necessarily have the condition themselves. We refer to them as carriers. So two unaffected people who each carry one copy of the mutated gene have a 25% chance with each pregnancy of having a child affected. So I'll move my face again here just so you can see everything. So here's a little diagram I made to kind of explain that, where this H here, this big H in blue, is representing a healthy allele. And the pink one is representing mutated, or the condition, it has the condition anyway. So I've just used H for healthy and little h not healthy. Okay, so this is representing one parent here who is a carrier. So he's got one healthy allele and one mutated allele. And the other parent is the same, one healthy allele and one mutated allele. So because the children here are getting one of their alleles from each parent, it is going to be this kind of a pattern. So see, these two, this one and this one, are both carriers. So one could have got this blue healthy allele from this parent and the pink from this parent. And the opposite could be true. Could have got the pink from this parent and the blue from this parent. A child could also get the blue from each parent, and the blue being the healthy allele, and be perfectly healthy and not a carrier. But here's the 25% chance. You could have gotten each parent's pink allele, and that would mean you would have the condition. So that's generally the pattern that we see. So let's look at a few of the different conditions that follow this pattern. And what we're most interested in here is the genetics, not necessarily knowing a whole bunch about these diseases, although there's plenty to read about them if you're interested. But what I'm going to do is just kind of give you a very, very brief overview here of each of the main ones. So Tay Sachs disease, it's a rare inherited disorder that follows this pattern. It causes progressive destruction of nerve cells in the brain and the spinal cord. And it follows this pattern here. So two parents who probably do not realize that they are carrying the condition would have this 25% chance of having a child with the condition. Albinism is another one that follows this pattern as well. So you've probably heard of people that are identified as albinos. It just means they have no pigment, or maybe a little bit of pigment in their eyes and their skin and their hair. So their eyes may not be brown or blue. You may just be able to see the blood through it, and sometimes their skin is just really, really white. It doesn't have anything to do with their ethnic background at all. It's just they don't have the pigment of melanin, so it does affect people from all races, and that follows this pattern of inheritance as well. Another one is cystic fibrosis, and that's caused by a defect in the gene called the cystic fibrosis transmember conductance regulator gene. So it's probably good just to call it CFTR. So this gene makes a protein that controls the movement of salt and water in and out of the cells. And in people with cystic fibrosis, this gene doesn't work effectively. It causes thick, sticky mucus, very salty sweat. Okay, I'm going to switch to my whiteboard and we'll do some Punnett squares on recessive disorders. So grab some scrap paper and follow along. And recessive conditions are going to be relatively easy because it's basically the same thing as Mendelian genetics with pea plants, except we're looking at conditions in humans. So conditions that humans can have which are caused by a recessive gene. So in this case, you would have one, or a person would have one healthy allele and then one that had the condition on it. Okay, so this could be the dad here. And then the mom also has one healthy allele and then one with the condition on it, whatever that might be. So their child could end up inheriting one allele with the condition from each parent, and then they would have the condition. So let's do a couple Punnett squares. And like I said, it doesn't really matter what the condition is you're looking at, whether it's Tay Sachs or galactosemia or cystic fibrosis. The pattern of inheritance is always the same. So I'm just going to use an H, a capital H, and that's going to be a healthy allele. So here we have a parent who has a genotype of big H, little h, and they're heterozygous for that trait. And let's cross them with another person who is heterozygous. So in this case, we have two parents who do not have the condition, since they both have a healthy allele, but they both are carrying an affected allele as well. And they may not know this. They may not even know it runs in their family, because these affected alleles may not have shown up. And they may not have shown up for generations and generations. So let's do our cross. We've got one person here who is homozygous dominant, and they will not have the condition, and they will not be a carrier for it. And we've got one person here who is heterozygous, and they will not have the condition, but they are a carrier for it, so their offspring could potentially get the condition. And then the same is going to happen up here. We're getting one healthy allele and one affected allele. So heterozygous may pass it along to offspring, but do not have the condition themselves. And then a person could also get a little h from mom and a little h from dad. And this person would have the condition and would be affected. So if you were asked a question like what percentage of their offspring would have the condition, then the answer is going to be 25%, 1 out of 4. If your question was, what's the phenotypic ratio, then you would say 3 healthy to 1 affected. If you were asked for the genotypic ratio, you would say 1 would be heterozygous dominant, 2 would be heterozygous, and 1 would be homozygous recessive. And we could do a variety of crosses like this. I'll put a couple on and you can pause it and give them a try, and then I'll work them out for you. So I'm going to put on a person who has the condition and a person who's a carrier. And I'm going to put on a person who has the condition and a person who is homozygous dominant does not have the condition. And I'm going to put on a person who is homozygous dominant, is healthy, with a person who is a carrier. Okay, now you could pause the video here and try to work these out. Okay, hopefully you paused and you can, you've worked these out. Now I'm going to go through them with you. So here, hopefully you would get, okay, there's a healthy allele and an affected allele, a healthy allele and an affected allele, two affected alleles. So in this case, these parents have a 50-50 chance of their child being affected with the condition. Now here we've got two healthy alleles, a carrier, and then another carrier. So none of their children will have the condition, but 50% of them could pass it on to offspring. Now in this case, we've got a carrier, a carrier, a carrier, and a carrier. So 100% of their children would be carriers in that case. So hopefully you were able to solve those and realize it's just basic Mendelian genetics. And that's good enough for today.